All right, welcome back to our article of the week. Today's learning target is I can trace and evaluate an argument. Okay, I'm going to talk to you all about what an argument is and what it's not in just a little bit, but I want to focus in on those two verbs, trace and evaluate. You know, when you trace something on paper, you've got a white sheet of paper over something and you follow the lines and you trace it so that you can put it on your own paper. Well, that's the same thing with tracing an argument. You're reading along and you're following along the author's line of thinking through reasons and evidence that support the author's claim. We'll talk about what those words mean in a little bit. You're able to follow it from the beginning all the way to the end. Evaluate means to judge. And when you are evaluating an argument, you're judging whether it's well written or it's not. And there's certain things that an argument has to have in order to be considered well written. So we're going to talk about what those are as well so that you can evaluate arguments on your own. Before I get started, make sure that you have your notes. If you're in the classroom with me, you're probably going to have these on paper. So all you need is a pencil. And if you are working from home, you're going to be using this digital copy and you'll just type in where the blanks are so that you have the key details in your notes. And we're going to start right here with what is an argument? So an argument is when an author expresses a point of view and supports that view with reasons and evidence. So a point of view is also known as an opinion. Okay, and I know you, all sixth graders, have lots of opinions on things. But what makes an opinion different from an argument is that opinion, but it's backed up with reasons and evidence. So it turns it from an opinion into an argument when you see reasons and evidence to support it. Make sure you have those in your notes. You'll be typing in or writing down the blue words into your notes. So we first start with a claim. The claim is the main point. And sometimes we'll call it a thesis sentence. And I know you should remember this word from when we wrote the TDA earlier. This is the point that you're trying to prove to be true. Remember when we finished our novel studies and you had to write a thesis sentence and then you had to go back into the novels and find evidence to support your reasons. All of that is argument writing. You have done this before. So the claim is a statement that the author believes to be true. Okay, and if the author believes it to be true, the author is going to try and prove it's true through reasons and evidence. The claim is an opinion based on the author's knowledge and research. So research meaning if you go back into a text and find quotes from a book, that's research, okay? And that's going to support your overall claim. Now, yesterday, you read an article about the advantages of pet adoption compared to buying pets from a pet store or from a breeder. And the author had a very clear claim, a very clear opinion on pet adoption. And I want you to write this in your notes as an example claim. The author wrote, "It's better to adopt pets than buy them." And it's very clear because even in the title of the article, it says, adopt, don't shop. Okay, so that is the claim, and that's the main argument that the author is going to be has proven true throughout that article that you traced yesterday. So let's go on to, before we go on to reasons, in your notes, there is a space for you to draw like a little sketch or a picture or an organizer. I want you to draw something that will help you remember what a claim is and why it's important in an argument. Okay, this is the main point. Maybe you can think of an image or a shape or something that will show you what a claim is and why it's important. So pause the video, make sure you have your notes filled in up through this section, draw your little picture, and then we'll move on to reasons. All right, so you've got a claim, which is the main point. Well, you have to have reasons to support. You can't have an opinion without reasons or it really is not very meaningful, especially if you want that turn that opinion into an argument. So reasons will support the author's claim. That's why you have them. And in my opinion, you need to have 3 different reasons to support your claim if you want to have a strong argument. If you have an opinion but you only have 1 reason for it, it's just going to be a weaker argument. If you want a strong argument, you need to have at least 3. 3 is kind of the magic number. And in the article yesterday, there were 3 reasons the author made the claim that pets, dogs in particular, should be adopted. And these are the 3 reasons I want you to put down as example reasons in your notes. The first reason was pets that are adopted are healthier. And the author goes in to explain what puppy mills are and how a lot of breeders and pet stores will get dogs from those puppy mills, and they're kept in cages, and the mothers are mistreated, and they end up not being very healthy at all. Another reason the author said we should adopt instead of shop is that it's actually less expensive to adopt pets than buy them. And then the third reason the author listed was that adoption helps helps save the lives of pets that are in shelters. And we read how many dogs are in shelters each year that if you adopt them, we're saving the lives so they're not euthanized. So those are the 3 reasons, 3 is the magic number, that the article had to support the claim it's better to adopt. All right, at this point, I want you to make sure you have the reasons and the blanks filled in, and I do want you to draw some sort of an image, a sketch. You could draw shapes, something that represents reasons. You could even draw like little stick figures that represents the idea of reasons. Pause the video, and then we'll move on to evidence. Okay, so we have a claim, which is the opinion, the reasons which support the claim. Now we finally have the evidence, and the evidence is what supports all those reasons. Good arguments have facts, examples, statistics, which are associated with numbers, quotes, and expert opinions. And focus on that word expert. It's not just opinions of people. We get experts' opinions, like maybe a doctor or an architect or a veterinarian in this case of this article. Someone who is a professional and an expert in that topic. And that makes the evidence much more reliable when you've got an expert giving you information instead of just some random person. So in yesterday's article, when we read it yesterday, there was a lot of evidence in the article. I'm going to give you 3 examples, but you only have to write 2 down. So one example I pulled right from the article was this fact. Unfortunately, some online breeders and pet shops get their dogs from puppy mills. So not all, but some of the places that you would buy pets and breeders, they get them from puppy mills. And that's a fact. That was a good piece of evidence to support the claim. Another piece of evidence I found from the article, rescue dogs are much less expensive than pet stores. Typical prices range from $50 to $250. Okay, that could be, you could consider that a statistic, a fact, but it does support the author's claim. And finally, one other piece of evidence that you can include in your notes. This is another statistic. Approximately 3.3 million dogs are brought to animal shelters each year. And that definitely supports the claim we should adopt to help save the lives of those animals. So there are just 3. There's many more the article had, but I just picked those 3 as examples. Make sure you have at least 2 pieces of evidence as examples. Draw a little sketch, something to help you remember what evidence is in your notes. Pause the video, make sure you have everything for this section, and then we're going to move on to a little review. All right, so here it is in just one screen. This is what an argument is. It is a claim supported by reasons and evidence. So the claim is what the author thinks. That's the big opinion. The reasons are why the author thinks this. And the evidence is, how does the author support his or her thinking? So make sure you write in claim, reasons, and evidence. Now that you know the components of an argument, let's talk about how to evaluate it. Remember, evaluate just means to kind of judge whether it's strong or it's weak. Before I go into what to look for, I do want you to think about this fact. Sometimes sixth graders will read an argument and they don't agree with it. They don't agree with it, so they say it's a bad argument. And that's not true. Just because you don't agree with something doesn't mean it's not a strong argument. So just be careful. You might not agree with it, but you can still recognize the argument is strong because it has good reasons and it has a lot of evidence to support those. So just keep that in mind when you're evaluating argument. So I like to use the acronym FELT when it's time to evaluate an argument. FELT is a fabric, okay? It's a fuzzy fabric. Sometimes it's on toys. Sometimes people use it to make crafts. It's the fabric that holds together a strong argument. F-E-L-T. Fairness, evidence, logical, and tone are the 4 words. Let's go through each one. So the F stands for fairness. You're going to add that to your notes. And I want you to ask yourself, is it balanced or is it biased? Biased arguments are arguments that only talk about one side of an issue. They don't give you any information on the other side. It's one-sided. And if it's one-sided, it's weak. Strong arguments actually address the opposite side. They call it a counterclaim. And when you address the opposite side and try to talk about solutions for the opposite side, that makes your argument actually much stronger. If you ignore the other side and don't address it, the argument is weaker and it's biased. The E stands for evidence. The evidence needs to be reliable and relevant. Reliable means you can trust it, like expert opinions, okay, using reputable websites, not just random quotes from ordinary people. You want experts like doctors, lawyers, people who are experts in the field. Relevant means it's current, it's up to date. If you're writing an argument about technology as a subject, for example, and you're getting evidence from the 1980s, that's probably not very relevant. You want current, up-to-date evidence. So we want it to be reliable and relevant. The L stands for logical. Does the claim make sense based on the evidence that's been given? If there's a mismatch, if the evidence doesn't really support the claim, then it's probably not very logical. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and that makes it a weaker argument. And the last thing to think about is tone. It's the author's attitude about the topic. Is it appropriate? And with argument, you want a pretty serious tone. If it's too emotional, if it gets to be sarcastic or silly, that's not an appropriate tone, and it actually makes the argument weaker. Let's pretend there's an attorney in the courtroom speaking to the judge and the jury, and he gets all silly, or he gets real sarcastic with the jury. Do you think that's going to make his argument stronger? No, absolutely not. People don't appreciate sarcasm and silliness when they're talking about something serious. So the tone has to be appropriate to make the argument strong. So when it's time for you to decide whether an argument is strong or not, think of felt. Is it fair? Is it balanced? Is the evidence reliable and relevant? Does it make sense? Is it logical? And is the tone appropriate? Is it serious? And if you can say yes to all 4 of those, then that is a strong argument. Now, what we're going to do at this point is we're going to practice. We're going to read an argument for and against a topic of e-games, video games. Okay, and there's this debate that's been going on for a little while now, and it continues, that video game competitions, people who compete in video games should be considered athletes or sport. It should be a sport. Some people believe it should be a sport because there's a lot of training and skill involved. In fact, there are over 100 colleges already that have their own gaming teams, and they compete. For example, my son was in a competition this past weekend. A college sponsored it, and the top prize was a $15,000 scholarship. So it's becoming a pretty popular thing in the world of college, and a lot of money can actually be made off of these gaming competitions. So some people say it should be considered a sport, and then some people say no, it shouldn't be considered a sport. So you're going to read a debate as an article on both sides of the issue. Let me show you what it looks like. If you're at home, you're going to be reading it digitally. I've got the link in the assignment, and it says, "Are video games a sport?" That's the title. If you're reading from home, there's the text-to-speech if you want it read to you. You're going to read the little introduction. The first section is that, yes, it should be considered a sport. And then the second section is, the last half of it, is it no, it shouldn't be a sport. So you have both sides of this debate. You get to read both arguments for and against it. And after you've read it, you're going to go back to your notes and finish them with these last two sections. So I want you to, for the argument that is yes, it should be a sport, tell me the reason or reasons that were given in that argument and a piece of evidence that supports that reason. And for the side of the argument that says no, it should not be a sport, write the reason for that side of the argument and what's the evidence that supported it. And then finally, I want you to tell me what you think based on, after having read both sides of the argument, I want you to write your claim. What's your opinion? And you'll just use this sentence right here. Video games should or should not be considered a sport. You tell me what you think. Give me one reason why you think that, and then one piece of evidence to support your reason. So you will end up having traced the argument, and you will have end up kind of evaluating the argument when you go through the reasons and the evidence as well. So when you're done with that, you're going to turn that in digitally if you're working from home. If you're in the classroom, you're going to raise your hand or hand it to Mrs. Bullard. That's me. And I will check you off for your classwork assignment today. Good job.